Assista agora a mais um lançamento com a qualidade Vídeo 3.
The universe, the lifeblood of all things, the home of a billion stars, each with its place in the order of the heavens, and each governed by the infinite law of the cosmos. As the ever-expanding energy of the universe continues to grow in a sea of fusion and creation, the infinite depth of the cosmic reality embraces itself in the fabric of destiny. The awareness of mankind grows in accordance with the rule of cosmic law. Since the dawn of humanity, we have looked out towards the stars as if compelled by an unknown force, telling us, you are not alone. You are all part of the evolution of the universe on your way to higher realms of enlightenment. The expanding universe, with its infinite complexities and compelling influences, is the kaleidoscope of man's dreams. With new attitudes and new points of view, our understanding is growing, bringing scientific influence towards new horizons. At last, we are beginning to grasp the meaning of the primeval commandment, know thyself, which is inscribed over the portal of Delphi. Today, we have a new model concept of science which proves that all natural systems, from minerals to man, inherit a collective memory of their kind. One of the great pioneers who achieved a breakthrough in this area is Dr. Rupert Sheldrake, a biologist whose remarkable discoveries shook the fundamentals of established science.
The entire basis for my work is the idea of the evolutionary universe. You see, until 1966, most people thought of the universe as essentially static, most physicists. And the idea was that evolution occurs on Earth, in the biological and human realm, in a universe which is at best static, at worst actually running down, devolving rather than evolving. Since 1966, we've had the idea of an evolutionary cosmos, an evolutionary cosmology. And this changes everything, because now we see biological evolution in the context of cosmic evolution. And the idea of cosmic evolution gives us the idea that all of physics and chemistry, everything, is evolving. And this is what leads me to my main point, that if everything's evolving, then why shouldn't the laws of nature evolve too? Indeed, why shouldn't they be more like habits? This is the essential insight of my work on morphic resonance. And it depends entirely on this evolutionary insight into the whole of nature.
The awareness of our fundamental heritage is inherent in our being. The awakening of the wisdom of the whole is inexorably endorsed within the essence of our spirit. The influence from motivation to germination is the basis of our existence and is predictable in the course of our evolution. The pyramids reveal the wonders of our ancient past. They harness their proliferating energy from the cosmos that it may be utilized by another civilization in its many fields of endeavor. Our awareness of the origin of these citadels derives from past generations. It is inherent in the soul of civilized man to build such structures, reaching towards the source of unseen powers. The challenge of future accomplishment is the driving force behind human progress. From the horizon of the past, the traditions and memories of visiting cosmic teachers has remained engraved in cultural art. This tradition dates from the era when spacecraft visited Earth from distant worlds. Proof of the historical facts of continuing extraterrestrial visitations has been revealed by Eric van Däniken, a best-selling author who investigates the archaeological and ancient artifact connection.
We have been influenced by extraterrestrial beings for thousands of years and will continue to be so in the future. And everything in its own time, the time of the possible. You could say that when an apple is ripe, it falls from the tree a couple of days later. The same is true in global thinking. The extraterrestrials influence us today. They influence prominent people, who then think positively and in turn influence others. There is a constant flow of energy, of thoughts, of new ideas, from the outside to the inside, and from inside to outside.
The ancient Indians of Peru were a highly advanced civilization who lived thousands of years ago in the jungle of South America. Their traditions speak of visiting spaceman. At their reservations are the amazing Nazca lines, which are etched into the earth and which are acknowledged as being aircraft runways and landing sites. Artifacts of great age have been found which closely resemble aircraft of today. The sensational crop formations of England have generated great interest, and the question has to be asked if there is any connection with the etching in Peru.
Ich kenne die Hopi-Indianer sehr gut. Sie leben heute in Arizona. Aber ihre alte Geschichte.
I know the Hopi Indians very well. Today they live in Arizona. But their old traditions say that many, many thousands of years ago their home was in South America, and that at that time they were descended upon by extraterrestrial visitors called Kachinas. These Kachinas also saved the Hopi Indians when their continent threatened to sink. These heavenly beings, the Kachinas, were the teachers of the Hopi, and even today the Hopi Indians make figures of the Kachinas for the younger generations, so that no one should forget the visit of their original teachers from outer space. And even today the Hopi are convinced that one day the Kachinas will come again. In this connection, it's interesting that a short time ago I showed White Bear, one of the oldest members of the Hopi, pictures of the Maya cities Tikal and Palenque. He was beside himself with excitement and said, "We understand that. Our ancestors built that under the guidance of the Kachinas."
The great energy source of the cosmos can be extracted and focused to form a very potent electrical and magnetic power form. It is a power of great destructive potential, and the ability to control it can only be given to those of higher understanding and achievement. Such power sources were built into the Great Pyramids by another race thousands of years ago, when they needed recharging facilities for their spacecraft while on reconnaissance flights around the universe. The units were built within the protective framework of the pyramids to protect them from discovery. As the world focuses on the mystery of the Egyptian temples, our space probes have located similar strange pyramids on Mars.
We have the very mysterious structures on Mars, pyramids, and particularly the large humanoid face looking into the Martian sky. All the investigations on Mars with the Viking probes show quite clearly that Mars has been in the past different. The physical makeup points to an ecological system. And the pyramids, again, really make quite clear that they cannot be possibly natural structures. I really believe that they are artificial structures. The human or humanoid face on Mars shows that if there have been visitors in the past, a long time ago, then they were humanoid.
The readings of the early Bible told many stories of Earth being visited by heavenly teachers on blazing chariots who gave information of great wisdom. They told of how they had always been in the sky and would return one day. This is one of the prophecies of the Bible, which was taken from the word of the visitors. How did modern man go about interpreting these holy clues? The visionaries of the past perceived the structure of the cosmos and its purpose. The life spirit of the elements is a constantly changing mirror of charged perception and energy. The spiral of conscious awareness is the consequence of harmonizing with this harmonic vibration. Within the evolutionary circle of cosmic regeneration is the life force of progression, through which the universal memory of intuition is formed. Leonardo da Vinci was a man of great vision. He realized the significance of the hologram of man in relation to his place in the order of the universe. Many of the first astronomers studied the sky principally from an ideological standpoint. Galileo Galilei applied himself to analyzing the cosmos with a view to finding out just how it worked. Kepler believed in the law of equal equation, whereby all scientific experience could be solved by the use of mathematics. The real world is the mathematical harmony discoverable in all things. He also had visions involving space travel, and this already at the beginning of the 17th century. In a letter to Galilei, he wrote, "Let us create vessels and sails adjusted to the heavenly ether, and there will be plenty of people unafraid of the empty wastes. In the meantime, we shall prepare for the brave sky travelers maps of the celestial bodies. I shall do it for the moon, you, Galilei, for Jupiter." Isaac Newton spent many years studying alchemical research, cosmic intelligences, and the soul of the world. His law of universal gravitation involves a holistic vision. Every particle of matter attracts every other particle. Everything is interconnected, but in Newton's opinion, such a force could not arise from the particles themselves. They had no such attractive power. Rather, said Newton, gravitational force depends on the being of God. It is an expression of his will. This aspect of Newton's thought was soon forgotten, however. The hidden forces permeating the space of the universe were soon attributed to matter itself. They arose from material reality rather than from God. And when God was finally dissolved completely away from Newton's vision, what was left was a world machine in absolute mathematical space and time, containing inanimate forces and matter, and entirely governed by eternal mathematical laws. Like Kepler, Albert Einstein was strongly imbued with a sense of the mathematical rationality of the universe. He wrote, "The individual feels the futility of human desires and aims and the sublimity and marvelous order which reveal themselves in both nature and in the world of thought. Individual existence impresses him as a kind of prison, and he wants to experience the universe as a single magnificent whole." What a deep conviction of the rationality of the universe, and what a yearning to understand Kepler and Newton must have had to enable them to spend years of solitary labor in disentangling the principles of celestial mechanics. Only one who has devoted his life to similar ends can have a vivid realization of what has inspired these men and given them the strength to remain true to their purpose in spite of countless failures. For 10,000 years, man has tried to equate with the enormity of the cosmos. The concept of an evolutionary universe which started with gods from the stars, spaceships and telescopes will carry us into a totally changed life. So we turned our faces towards the heavens in the hope of finding a deeper understanding of ourselves, to participate in the quest for universal knowledge, and to hold out our hands in the search for possible cosmic neighbors.
If we consider that most of the stars in the Milky Way are twice as old than our sun, 10,000 million years old, then obviously there may be highly advanced old civilizations which have developed interstellar travel. So my answer would be it is more than likely, not only possibly, but more than likely, that extraterrestrial visitors are traveling to other solar systems, other planetary systems. Thus, we really should expect extraterrestrial visitors in our solar system observing human civilization.
As fantastic as this may seem, photographs of unknown flying craft, known as UFOs, have been taken around the world, captivating the public's attention for decades. This photograph was taken in 1978 in Brazil. This was photographed in Switzerland in 1975. These two UFOs were also photographed in Switzerland in 1975. This was taken in 1971 in Austria. This one was seen in 1987 in Canada. This UFO was photographed in Germany in 1977. This was taken in Colombia in 1971. This photograph of a shiny silver object was taken in North Charleston, South Carolina in 1980. Yet another photograph from Switzerland taken in 1975. This UFO with the cloud-like vapor was taken in 1974 in Denmark. This UFO was sighted in 1977 in Uruguay. A UFO in Indonesia, photographed in 1974. These three luminous flying objects were photographed in Barcelona, Spain in 1978. Every year, increasing numbers of UFO photographs are being taken by witnesses from around the world, giving growing evidence of extraterrestrial visitors. In 1946, George Adamski, a professor of philosophy, using his Cinecamera, took the first moving pictures of alien spacecraft. This film shows the strange flight pattern of these machines. This picture shows three balls beneath the craft serving as condensers for static electricity. This film, also taken by Adamski, shows a telemeter disc, described as being a very small but highly technical reconnaissance craft. Adamski was an amateur astronomer who had a 6-inch telescope on the slopes of Mount Palomar. In 1946, he observed a huge cigar-shaped UFO and was astounded to see many smaller UFOs emerge from the mother craft. He was able to take a series of photographs of this amazing sight. After taking many photographs of these alien flying machines, an event took place which would change the course of Adamski's life. On November 20th, 1952, he had his first contact with a human-looking alien visitor. Adamski was walking in a desert canyon in California when he came face-to-face with an extraterrestrial standing beside a landed spacecraft. The alien told Adamski that the meeting was not by accident and that he had come to give a message. He warned of the danger we were creating by exploding nuclear weapons. He said that the human race had no idea of the very powerful and deadly long-term effects we were creating, which could not only destroy ourselves, but also our planet, and that the continued use of such weapons could eventually endanger our cosmic neighbors. Adamski was asked to spread this message. The alien visitor promised that he would return and meet Adamski at a later time. Adamski was later taken for flights into space, where deeper, more meaningful messages were given to help the human race to understand another point of view of our world. Adamski devoted his time to spreading the visitor's message and was later joined by a Danish Air Force Major, Hans Petersen.
Well, you see, after the contact in the desert, George had an inner feeling that this was not the end of it. On one of his flights, more flights, but one particular he was taking on board a mothership, which is a very, very large ship who is taking all the other vehicles into our atmosphere. And in there, he met a lot of people, and he met an old man, so to speak, a wise man, who told him a lot of why they were here and what we did wrong here on Earth. And after these experiences, George wrote a book, Inside the Spaceships.
In this book, Adamski described in detail the very advanced technology used in the spaceships, including technical information on the magnetic and gravitational propulsion systems, which work on a power found throughout the universe. He also described a magnetic pole running through the center of the ship that was also a very powerful periscope, which could observe both above and below the craft with great magnification. Adamski's alien friends gave him a pendant to wear around his neck and was told it would increase his telepathic abilities and enable him to maintain contact with them. Another witness who was truly shattered by his experience when he saw and photographed a UFO was Dr. Daniel Fry. Dr. Fry was a rocket engineer and the head of a scientific team employed by the American government at the White Sands Missile Proving Grounds in New Mexico when he took these films and photographs. On July 4th, 1949, Dr. Fry was contacted by alien visitors for the first time. They informed him that mankind lives in danger of total self-destruction through means it had created itself, and that Earth technology was advancing faster than man's ability to control himself. He was told that peace was the automatic byproduct of understanding between man and race and race. Also that the understanding of fellow human beings was the key to building a united world.
The most significant experience that I had is probably the finding out of the major purpose for this invasion, so to speak, was to keep this planet alive, that we're approaching an area of controversy which could result in the displacement of all humanity, because we had learned how to do that without learning how to get along.
Dr. Fry later wrote a book called To Men of Earth, in which he told the story of his experiences and contacts with the space visitors. He continues to travel, giving lectures and spreading the word from his alien friends. Dr. Fry attracts a great deal of support from people in all walks of life.
Rushed outside, and there came a spaceship sailing, passing us, making a curve, going down south and coming in from the south, passing over our heads and disappearing to the north. And 1 hour later it came back and passed in low altitude, and it passed the moon, which has come up meanwhile, so you could see it was an Adamski type saucer. I've been so close to them. I have had the telemeter dish, the small flying saucers which are making reconnaissance within 75 meters, 2 of them. I have one being disintegrated on my terrace. I have seen flying saucers, the George Adamski type, within 200 meters in front of my car. I have seen 2 flying saucers land, both cases with my wife, so I had a witness.
The founder of the German UFO Society, Carl Veit, is also a publisher of UFO books. For decades, he has published books written by contactees. Many years ago, he had the foresight to realize the value of the information.
There were 12 of us sitting in the garden, and the pictures were shown by this television man. And I explained them again as well as I could. And in the middle of my explanation, the baby daughter, she was the youngest member of this family, called out, "Daddy, what is that?" and pointed up. We were all looking at the screen, and then we also looked, and there vertically above us, or nearly vertically, there was a wonderful large UFO, rather low. Of course, we were all amazed. We gazed up, we waved, and in a way gave thanks that they had come during the UFO lecture and wished to greet us, or to say, "Yes, we are here, the ones you're talking about."
Tony Dodd is a retired British police sergeant who had a close encounter with a UFO. Since that time, he has become the Director of Investigations for Quest International, Europe's largest UFO investigation organization.
I was driving a police patrol vehicle in a remote area in Yorkshire when I saw the most amazing disc-shaped flying machine. This machine was about 100 meters off the road, above the road. It was glowing white, bright white. It had colored lights rotating around the underside of it. It had a dome on the top with what appeared to be portholes. It was going at no more than 30 kilometers per hour, but the strange thing was that it was making no sound. It was the most amazing thing I've ever seen. This was no doubt a real UFO. I'm convinced of this. It did not resemble anything that we have which is flying around in the sky. It had an effect on my police car radio. It blanked out the transmissions with a very heavy static effect. The object moved away from us and disappeared into the distance and appeared to land in a forest on a hillside.
George once told me that they work in all countries, all over the world. And they live among us, they have jobs. One day George met a couple in New York on 5th Avenue. He was looking in a shop in the window, and a couple passed him with a little boy between them. And he got this strange feeling that they were space people. And he put a thought towards them: are you space people? Then come back. They turned around and came back and said, your thought is correct.
Adamski was given insight into the purpose of his life by his extraterrestrial friends.
And in this sense, all these people who have come into contact with extraterrestrial beings are confronted with these wonderful facts, and they have also had an insight into their lives. Why they are here. That's what was also said to George Adamski, that he should, so to say, be a pioneer in the field of ufology, because in the development of the human race, we now face great, higher problems.
Our first face-to-face contact with a member of your race in modern times was a man called George Adamski. He was chosen because of his astronomical awareness and placid naivete, coupled with a cosmological awareness. During our contact, he was told many things which he was asked to pass on to mankind, and was forewarned of the ridicule he would be exposed to. He showed high integrity and learned quickly the significance of our intentions. He was the ideal subject for our first contact. He created a chain reaction of awareness which continues to spread at the present time. He was the first seed sown by us to open the eyes of your world.
The first thing that made me realize that there was definitely something else happening was as a result of the first sighting. After this, using my policeman's mind, I used to watch in the area where I'd seen this thing. And over a period of time, I saw many more of them. And it got to a fairly regular event. And I saw them at close range. I saw them doing aerobatics, almost on occasions as if they were doing them for me, on very remote hillsides. And then on one occasion, one came past, it flew over my head, and I flashed a light at it. And this thing turned around and came back. And as it got above my head, this was only about 25 feet above the ground. It had a long light on the front of it, a long elliptical shaped light. And as it got to my position, the light increased intensity, went down, and then increased intensity and went down again, almost as if it was signaling me back. And then it turned and flew off again. I knew at this time this was an intelligently controlled machine who was acknowledging my signal. I was certain before this time that there were alien craft flying around, but this particular incident really convinced me of this.
So where are our alien visitors coming from? Or is it possible that they've been here all the time? If so, where? Science is turning its interest towards new areas of reality and dimensions previously unknown. With this new scientific approach, long sought-after answers to the mysteries of the universe are now being revealed. Working in this area of science is Thomas E. Bearden, presently focusing his research on gravitobiology, a new biophysics.
Much of this audience, a significant portion of it, has had at least unusual experiences in their life, with everything from contactee experiences to paranormal experiences to parapsychological experiences to you name it, religious experiences, mystical experiences, and so forth. A part of the audience, of course, is merely curious about those things and has not had maybe some kind of experiences of its own. The thing that you're dealing with when you have those experiences, I like to use the analogy of the 5 blind men and the elephant. We have been brainwashed and taught since our earliest childhood that reality is singular. It's brick-like. It's like a mechanical universe. It works like a clock. Wind it up and it goes a certain way. Certain laws apply and everything is absolutely mechanical and robotic. That is not true. It's as plastic as can be, and the Whittaker work shows that you can engineer it and make it what you will. You can make it a heaven or you can make it a hell. And so what we really live is in a universe that has many more dimensions. What we have in reality is really hyperdimensional. There are more dimensions than what we normally see. When we look in the corner and we see length, width, and height, there are actually dimensions that are hidden that we cannot see, and modern physics is in the business of representing many of those dimensions for various theories.
Military and civil airline pilots from around the world have constantly reported having the most unusual experiences in the skies, including contact with UFOs. On September 19, 1979, a UFO followed a military aircraft over Germany. This is a close-up of the object. This B-52 Canberra bomber was flying over Edwards Air Force Base in California in 1954 when a UFO was seen near the aircraft. Here is a close-up of the UFO. Many pilots flying B-52 bombers reported seeing UFOs. This one was photographed at 12,000 feet in June 1966 over Utah by aircraft pilot Williams. An aircraft over Venezuela had a close encounter with a UFO. This photograph was taken from the plane. In June 1976, the British Airways Concorde was being filmed in flight when a small UFO appeared. After maneuvering around the plane in a manner that indicated intelligent control, the UFO flew off at great speed. This was witnessed by the whole crew. Here is a replay in slow motion. Of the hundreds of UFO sightings made by aircraft pilots every year, the most amazing one was filmed from a commercial airliner by passenger Gene Oldfield as the aircraft cruised at 9,000 feet over Stafford, England on April 2, 1966. The film clearly shows the ability of the craft to perform maneuvers and feats of acceleration far beyond our present comprehension. Here is the film again in slow motion. This photograph was taken on February 7, 1979 at Zurich Airport when a glowing UFO bathed in a bright light appeared in front of an aircraft. On April 14, 1977, a Swiss airline pilot had an encounter with a UFO. Hans-Georg Schmidt suddenly saw an object moving rapidly towards his aircraft. It stopped approximately 3 miles away, glowing intensely, and then shot off again. Both military and civil ground radar units who were tracking the object later informed the pilot that the UFO had moved at 5 times the speed of sound. At 9 p.m. on January 4, 1988, Captain Dowie Stahl noticed a light in the sky ahead of his position. The object appeared to descend and then started to dance from side to side. It then climbed back to its original position. Pilots who witness UFOs while in flight are required to complete an official but confidential report. This was one of the early films taken of a UFO. The dramatic movement of the object showed rapid, almost instantaneous changes of speed and direction, which sparked intense curiosity and confusion among the public and scientific community. No earthly aircraft of the time could perform like this. While filming from a helicopter for the U.S. Navy on April 15, 1966, Lee Hansen, a professional photographer, shot these pictures of a flying object at Catalina Island, California. The craft, which had no wings or tail fins, was 30 feet in diameter and moving at approximately 150 miles per hour. No signs of a propulsion system were visible. This film, shot by James Waters in Colorado on July 23, 1963, shows a UFO moving across the sky at tremendous speed, followed by a second one. This is the same film at 1/12th speed. An analysis showed that no earthly aircraft could possibly fly so fast. In late December 1978, a record number of UFO sightings were being reported by radar operators and pilots in the area of Wellington, New Zealand. Just before midnight on December 30th, 1978, Quentin Fogarty, a reporter, and a television team took off in an Argosy aircraft to fly to Christchurch. Shortly after takeoff, Fogarty was informed by ground radar that they were being followed by several UFOs. During the 50-minute flight, UFOs were seen and filmed by the crew. The UFOs were described as having a luminous base and a transparent top. The objects were performing incredible aerobatics. This movement was captured on a single frame of film.
it seems to me quite clear that a humanoid civilization will very likely try to find other humanoid civilizations in the Milky Way, if we just take the Milky Way as our place for travel. I'm not talking about extragalactic civilization now. The possibility of finding humanoid civilizations would always be of interest. Just like our astronauts, if we send them away in the search for life, will very likely try to find life which is a kind which is similar. If an astronaut has a chance to visit a planet where there's plant life or insect life, or another planet where there's humanoid life, he very likely will travel to the planet where there is humanoid life. And so it should not surprise us that the extraterrestrial visitors are always described as being humanoid.
The following sequence of photographs and film was taken by the astronauts. While in space, they had many encounters with UFOs that are now being revealed for the first time after decades of secrecy. On the Gemini 4 spaceflight on June 3, 1966, astronaut James McDivitt took a photograph of this cylindrical object. On the mission of Gemini 7, astronaut Frank Borman reported seeing these two objects flying in formation. On the Mercury 1 mission on February 20, 1962, John Glenn took this picture of two glowing objects. On the Gemini 11 mission, September 13, 1966, Pete Conrad and Richard Gordon observed a cluster of UFOs alongside their craft. They described them as large and very bright. During the Apollo 11 mission in July 1969, Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin saw these two UFOs, which were in orbit around the moon. The astronauts filmed the extraordinary glowing objects from the Apollo 11 spacecraft and reported to Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas, that the UFOs even accompanied them to the moon. Many astronauts made their own private films while on space missions. This film, shot by James McDivitt in a long sequence, shows the remarkable aerobatic ability of UFOs. The astronauts faced UFOs so regularly that they became part of their everyday life. Because of restrictions, however, they were unable to describe their encounters to the public. One of the first to break the silence is former astronaut Brian O'Leary, a professor of physics and an astronomer from Princeton University, who comes forward for the first time to speak of the reality of visitation from out of this world.
What I do know from my own experience and from scientific investigations and experiments is that UFO phenomena and a range of other events are part of our reality, as incredible as they may seem.
Jetzt war es dann endlich soweit. Der erste Mann war auf dem Mond gelandet.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
During their moonwalks, a giant glowing UFO hovered above their heads. While in orbit around the moon, a huge object remained in view for a considerable amount of time before it suddenly disappeared. This UFO was seen above the landing site. This cigar-shaped UFO was photographed from the orbiting space module.
Down to the bed. That may have been a small deal, but that's a long.
On this very first trip into the unknown, the astronauts repeatedly reported to Mission Control that they were being escorted by unidentified flying objects. After landing on the moon, the astronauts stated that the UFOs were still present in the distance, hovering near a large crater. They were well aware that they had been observed throughout their entire mission.
And also I can send down again. Yeah, powder. I was strolling on the moon one day in a merry, merry month of December. No, May's the month. May, that's right. May is the year of the month. When, much to my surprise, a pair of lovely eyes. Hello, Ryan, it's Houston. Hi there, we lost you for a while. Yeah, we sure did.
The momentous leap to the moon led to the dawning of the space age. Space travel opened up endless opportunities for mankind to explore new frontiers. NASA's plans are already well underway for colonies to be developed on other planets, beginning with Mars.
Space offers unlimited growth. You cannot force any living form to stop growing. People need to grow, and they need to have more elbow room and new frontiers. And the opening of space provides that. And so the moon, and particularly Mars, as a new living environment, will provide hope for future generations, many, decades in the future, to continue to grow. If we don't do that, Earth remains closed, and we would have to stop growing totally, entirely. Otherwise, we would destroy ourselves and the environment. And I don't think that this proposition of stopping to grow will be accepted by any living form, including humans. People want to grow. People want to have children.
The compelling influence of our origins is the energy which fuels life itself. The purpose of our existence is to move ever closer to the source of creation by the expansion of our horizons and species, to explore the frontiers of infinity, which are our inheritance.
The other aspect of it is, in order to continue our internal growth, we need to do external steps. In my feeling, I've always been confident that for every step we take on the outside, we have to take also a step on the inside, deeper down into ourselves. There is no way for us to explore Mars or to explore the universe if at the same time we don't also explore ourselves and become more complex humans, more rounded, more holistic humans. It is not really a necessity. I think it'll just happen anyway. It's a law. It's a natural law that if we do any step out to Jupiter and to Mars, and if we send our space probes out, we will change, whether we want it or not. It's a change in consciousness, and we will start asking questions which we have never even thought about years before. Just seeing the Earth from space as an individual little ping-pong ball has already caused a revolution in the environmental area. The environmental people have put the Earth as photographed from space on their banner, as a symbol, as a mandala. So space and its overview effect, the view of Earth from space, has helped to initiate a revolution of Earth consciousness, of people becoming conscious of Earth as a vulnerable spaceship which they need to keep in repair and maintained.
Here now some astronauts' impressions of their first view of Earth from space.
Looking back at our beautiful planet, you're immediately struck by what a gorgeous place we've been given to live. It's an incredible, living, beautiful planet going through the big black void of space.
I realized that mankind needs height to know our Earth, to see what we cannot see close up. Not just to love her beauty, but also to ensure that we do not bring even the slightest harm to the natural world.
The first day or so, we all pointed to our countries. The third or the fourth day, we were pointing to our continents. By the fifth day, we were aware only of one Earth.
The Earth is like color music. You see the colors, and the music springs in your soul. Our planet is so vulnerable and needs to be taken care of.
Yet another astronaut said, "In this complete silence of space, questions from the deepest inside arise." Where is my place in all this? What do I mean when I say I?
We rarely enter the Earth's atmosphere, but on one rare occasion, this remarkable film was shot of such a ship flying at low level over Germany in 1980. The object was seen by other witnesses in a nearby village who reported seeing 3 smaller craft emerging from the larger one. They stated that the craft was at least 100 feet long. This film of a cigar-shaped mothership was taken in Rhode Island, America on June 3, 1967. The leaf effect motion of the ship is common with most sightings. Craft of this size and shape have been reported all over the world. This aerial photo was taken by Inaki Ozis while flying at 8,000 feet in February 1968. Probably the same cigar-shaped mothership was photographed in Texas 10 days later. Over the following few days, an object fitting a similar description was reported by various witnesses.
My personal views on UFOs are that these are alien-piloted vehicles. When I say alien, I mean alien to anything we know. That possibly they come from other worlds, but I think it's highly likely also that they come from other dimensions, other time spheres. And that there isn't one type of alien coming here. There are probably many of them, all from different areas. When people report these things, we get such a variety of things reported, so many shapes, so many forms, and this appears to cause the confusion because there is such a variety of these things. But really speaking, if these things are visiting us from a whole host of different areas, one would expect them to be different forms, different machines. And I think this person is the answer to it.
Meanwhile, we scan the skies with optical and radio telescopes of great power, which penetrate the universe for 15 billion light years, watching, listening for signs of intelligent life. Large numbers of people on Earth wait and watch in the hope that one day they may be contacted or visited by visitors from space.
In Russia, a large crowd of people who had gathered to watch a famous singer being filmed saw more than they had bargained for when a UFO suddenly appeared above their heads. The camera crew quickly focused their camera on the object and recorded an aerial display that lasted several minutes. The crowd found this more intriguing than the singer. Even she eventually stopped singing to watch the UFO. Numerous UFOs are seen over Russia regularly. These balls of light are identical to those reported in Belgium and the rest of Europe in 1990, which attracted extensive attention on top military and civilian levels. In April 1990, this cigar-shaped UFO was filmed over Russia by an amateur. These flying objects are now acknowledged by the Russian military as being alien flying machines.
The nucleus, the authentic nucleus of the UFO phenomenon must be our research field, and that is certainly worthwhile. However skeptics may talk about the UFO phenomenon, whether they call people who have encountered psychopaths or even scientists who concern themselves with UFOs as cranks, we simply have to accept, if we inform ourselves, that there's a small percentage of absolute authentic cases which represent the UFO phenomenon. And we must continue to investigate this nucleus. It will be worthwhile.
When I first saw my UFO, I always quote my UFO now, you've got to bear in mind I was dealing with something like this with the clinical mind of a policeman. So my immediate reaction was, well, what makes a thing like this tick? How does it go? How can you get an enormous machine like this which doesn't make sound? Why does it look so beautiful? Why did I see it? Why was it there? There are so many whys. And I knew I had to find out answers to these things. It was very, very difficult. There was no easy way of finding an answer to something like this. But it seemed to me that things naturally came my way. I started to receive reports from people as it became known I was interested in this subject. And then I had so many other incidents following this of close encounters. It was quite amazing, really, because these things seemed to know where I was, even when I wasn't on the initial hillsides where I found them. I had occasions when I would be driving down a country road, then suddenly one of these things would be in the sky, flying alongside me very close. And it was almost a cat and mouse game. And I had nothing but no fear, never any fear, because there was never anything directed towards me which would indicate there was any hostility. And so I got a sort of affection for them. I had to keep thinking, what kind of technicians put something like this together? Because it was such an amazing thing. But I knew that this thing was not from here.
For the past 45 years, people from every country have reported seeing UFOs. The descriptions of these objects have been all too similar, despite the fact that the witnesses live thousands of miles apart. Witnesses include astronauts, pilots, scientists, and police. Even presidents of the United States. Jimmy Carter and Ronald Reagan have spoken openly about their seeing UFOs. Since 1945, an estimated 5 million UFO sightings have been reported from across the world. Most sightings are of singular objects, although many are of 2 or 3. In some cases, large formations have been spotted. The greatest number of UFOs usually appear after 9 p.m. Although a large percentage of these sightings can be explained as natural phenomena, many cannot. Thousands of people are asking questions. What are these UFOs? Where do they come from? Why can't I see one? Why are they here? And more people want to communicate with the extraterrestrials, to learn more about them, get to know them, to understand.
And we must continue to investigate this nucleus. It will be worthwhile to take up communication with extraterrestrial intelligences. May one day be not only a rewarding element in our lives, but it may guarantee our survival.
Through the presence of UFOs and the messages received from them, our attention was drawn to the power that we had created and the fear which had grown out of our inability to control it. Other civilizations are trying to convince us that technology has a more meaningful purpose when used for the good of all. We have reached a point when we need to ask ourselves whether we want to live in a world where the use of destructive technology is dictating the development of our Earth.
If we ask, what does the technology that goes on in the regular world today, what does it really try to do in science? Basically, it's trying to develop tools that are more and more powerful, they're smaller and smaller, they're cheaper and cheaper, and easier to build. If you extend that to the limit, where does that go? Where does that lead you? It leads you to this situation. The tools become so powerful that if they're used as weapons, they could destroy the whole Earth. They become so small that one person might hold one of these that would destroy the Earth in both hands. It'd be that small. They become cheap enough that maybe it costs only $3,000, and where a great number of citizens could readily afford that. Instead of buying a new car, they buy 3 or 4 of these. And it becomes simple enough that there are several 100,000 technicians properly trained with a little change of mind and all, can in fact build such devices. We are beginning to approach that area, beginning to arrive at that area now. We can make real progress in resolving or lowering or decreasing man's inhumanity to his fellow man and the great hostility of weaponry and so forth in the world today. And unless we do that, we simply will not survive our own technology. The power of our tools will be turned against us by other people who are inhumane, and we will destroy each other.
Man decides for himself. The alien visitors have achieved a high understanding of the forces of nature and harmonize with the many variations of the four elements, their creative energy, and their higher dimensions. We are now beginning to realize that this vast knowledge of the cosmos must be the basis of our new science.
Life is abundant in the cosmos in the approach that I'm taking. For example, in quantum mechanics, the modern view of the vacuum is that inside what we normally think is emptiness, there is continually appearing a little particle, a little form, a little group of particles, and then these almost instantly disappear, so fast that they can't be independently caught and measured. But they're very real. We have experiments which show they really do exist that fashion. And they continually appear and disappear all of the time at an incredible rate. And any kind of form that you might wish to name appears every so often in that. Any kind of living being, any kind of a material molecule or an atom of gold or an automobile or anything you might name, a living being, a living animal, appears in there with a certain occurrence, a certain frequency. And so what we have then is these things called ghost forms. And if we really look at that, it's an area that most quantum physicists are very, very uncomfortable with. But nonetheless, it is real. And so if we look at that, we have to then speak of the density of reality, how dense a thing is in the overall plan. And when we say something is observable or real and physical, what we really mean is it's very, very dense compared to these ghost forms. But the ghost forms are real. And theoretically, if you add energy to that form so that they acquire more energy, you could materialize any form whatsoever. And we wind up by pointing out that in space-time, the time portion of it, thought and mind and spirit exist in time as well as the matter. And so there is at least one common dimension, if we treat that as a dimension, the time dimension. And the ghost forms that are even thought forms, therefore also can theoretically be materialized, gathered sufficient energy.
The energy of the cosmos is present in all things and is a force which surrounds our very existence. It is interwoven into the substance of life and retains the memory of all action which is dissipated into the universe. The magnetic field which is possessed by all substance interacts with this force and absorbs from it. Consequently, the unknown evolutionary changes taking place in one area can be linked to another distant area without any physical contact. The breakthrough made by Dr. Rupert Sheldrake with the discovery of the memory of nature breaks down the boundaries between man and the cosmos, proving that he is a part of an intricate web of energy and memory in which man is no longer imprisoned in his conventional concept of time.
Well, I think Sheldrake's research, for example, is very significant. He has simply labeled this the morphogenetic field, a field that generates a force gradually over a very long period of time. It accumulates an antidote for what's wrong with a species, for example, or any system, for example. Take the basic idea. The parts of any system, even though they were separated in space, if they're connected by quantum potential, they act together as if they were partially connected back to a same local system and not separated at all. And so I think it's very exciting in its implications for physics, because we're talking about here a physics which is an entire order of magnitude deeper and more fundamental than the present physics we have. And as long as you cannot escape from the morphogenetic field, it is a spur which will drive physicists to look for the actual mechanism that causes that to happen. And when they really get that, and get that accepted, and get that where they learn to work with it, they will have a new physics, a more fundamental physics that can be used to better everybody's life. That's the significance of Rupert Sheldrake's work.
As our living planet drifted on the sea of eternity, soon after the dawning of the 20th century, the winds of change began to blow. Events were to take place which would change the course of mankind forever. The atomic age had arrived. As man detonated weapons of immense power, lights started to appear in the sky in a way that suggested that something was following the course of events. The shattering thought imposed itself that we were perhaps not the only inhabitants of the universe. Since the beginning of civilization, we had been watching the stars, never dreaming that they, in turn, might be watching us. History was about to change.
Because these lights appeared suddenly in the sky over Washington on July 20th, 1952, moving from the White House to the Capitol, hundreds of people witnessed the extraordinary event, and it left them stunned. The lights instantly jumped from one position to another. They were also observed by high military officials who knew what the lights were trying to say. The public had never seen anything like this, whereas the military had already a long history of involvement with these alien visitors, but had kept it from the public. An immediate emergency meeting was called to formulate a plan to divert public attention away from the occurrences. From that day on, it was decided to place the subject under the highest classification of security. Then came the first announcement to mislead the public made by Chief of Air Intelligence, Major General John Sanford.
We can say that the recent sightings are in no way connected with any secret development by any agency of the United States.
From that day on, the biggest secret of the century began. How did it all start? After the first atomic bomb was detonated, more tests were made of the effects on the environment and human subjects to gauge the degree of contamination unleashed. No knowledge of the devastating long-term effects existed at this time. Here in New Mexico, an Army base close to a small town called Roswell became the focus of attention on July 2nd, 1947, when Bill Brazel, a farmer, found a crashed disc-shaped craft on his land. The military arrived on the scene and quickly isolated the spot when they found debris scattered over a wide area. They also found 4 dead humanoid alien bodies who had been ejected from the craft. Because of many recent UFO sightings by the military, they accepted the existence of visitors from outer space who obviously possessed a technology which was far beyond our understanding. Now, for the first time, they had tangible evidence and were eager to learn its secrets. Roswell was the home of the 509th Bomber Wing, the sole American atomic bomber group. Major Jesse Marcel, an Army intelligence officer, was engaged on the recovery operation and asked Walter Haut, the Army public relations officer, to prepare a story for the local newspaper.
He told me to prepare a release with basically the information that he gave me over the phone. When it was done, to take it into community and hand deliver it to the 4 news media we had in Roswell at that time, which is what I did.
The story was published in the local paper. The news was also prepared to be aired by the local radio. but Judd Roberts, the radio station manager, was warned not to broadcast it. Sorry.
The question that we ran into is the very next morning, some friendly person, probably from Clinton Anderson's office, called us from Washington and said, we understand that you have some information, and we want to assure you that if you release it on this matter, because it's not supposed to be released, it's very possible that your license could be in jeopardy, and so we suggest that you not do it. And he said, when I mean in jeopardy, like maybe 3 days.
Preparations were made at Roswell Army Base for the transport of the wreckage. Robert Shirky witnessed the secret handling of the parts.
They came in the front door, straight down the hallway, and right out onto the ramp to climb into the airplane. And these were the people that were carrying parts of the crashed flying saucer at that time, UFO today, that I got to see. And that was the only thing I got to see. And it was very short, very quick. Colonel Blanchard, in order to get out of their way, had backed into the doorway of the ops office. And I stepped up to him and I said, Colonel, turn sideways. I want to see too.
On instructions from the Pentagon, Thomas Jefferson DuBose and General Ramey created a cover story saying the crashed object was a weather balloon.
We used that in order to assuage the curiosity of the press.
The wreckage was loaded back onto an aircraft and flown out under cover of great security and secrecy to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. The pilot kept silent for several years, but informed his wife after the story appeared in a newspaper.
I guess now that they're putting in the paper, I can tell you about this. I wanted to tell you for years. He said, I want you to read this article because it's a true story. And I not only know that it's true, but I'm the pilot who flew the wreckage of the UFO to Dayton, Ohio.
Wright-Patterson Air Force Base was considered the most technologically advanced research center in the United States. The wreckage of the Roswell crash was dismantled for analysis. The matter was considered of such importance that the orders came directly from President Truman. Under the cover of the CIA, Truman created a group called Majestic 12 for dealing with and covering up all information about UFOs. President Truman gave the task of handling UFOs only to the highest-ranking generals. After the Roswell crash, a special group of scientists was formed and facilities built to be prepared to deal with any further UFO crashes which would occur. Wendell Stevens was a lieutenant colonel in technical intelligence in the U.S. Air Force and is now a UFO investigator.
Now having an extraterrestrial vehicle and some bodies in their hands, didn't know when the next one would come down, where they came from, what they were going to do about it. There were a lot of unanswered questions. And the United States was in a turmoil at the time administratively because we were shifting from a war economy and a military-industrial command structure to a civilian structure. So the military was still dominant, and they wanted to keep control of this until they knew what was happening. So they created, and remember, General Marshall was our Secretary of State at the time. He was a five-star general. These people selected certain representatives from the military-industrial complex that they controlled, generals and admirals and certain scientists that worked with the military and worked with industrial planning. These men were designated as a task force to take charge of any event that followed. And one did. Almost a year later, on the 25th of March of 1978, the next one came down, 1948, the next one did crash, and it came down under observation by radar, so that we knew where it landed at the time that it struck the ground, and a helicopter was over it in less than an hour. It reported what it observed, and the plan generated by these people from the military-industrial complex after the Roswell crash was immediately put into place. All of the generals and admirals and advisors and scientists were contacted and ordered to proceed to a base in Colorado, where they were picked up and driven to the crash site. Now, all of these men have gone to the scene to see for themselves what an alien vehicle looks like, and they were going to advise General Marshall directly, who was controlling everything from remote position from telephones, on how to proceed. And when an operation is that big, you can't cover everything up. We discovered that the owner of the property where the vehicle came down was arrested in his house with his family, and they were kept in the house for 4 days, not allowed to go outside or anything. All the roads in the area were blocked. All access was closed. People that lived close enough to know something about it were kept in their houses. Now, if it never happened, then this evidence wouldn't exist. But now we are finding solid evidence that something strange did happen and that these events actually took place. Then we found people who observed the recovery of the craft from a distance, that saw the task force moving across off roads over country to a secure military facility at Los Alamos. And with these leads, we were able to turn up other witnesses, all of whom had been sworn to secrecy by their superiors at the time they participated in these events. And only a few of them would talk to us, and only on condition that they not be identified because of their vulnerability. What happens in a case of violation of security oaths of this nature, they could lose all pay and allowances due or ever to become due. They could be imprisoned. They could be fined a lot of things that none of them could stand.
Through Secretary of State General Marshall, the security of the UFO situation was intensified. A closer relationship developed between the military and Majestic 12. As time passed, the power of Majestic 12 grew stronger. Virgil Armstrong was an intelligence officer with the CIA and worked with highly classified assignments. He retired with the rank of major.
I received documents which said that a UFO had landed in the middle of White Sands, New Mexico proving grounds, and that this object was inert, was under surveillance, and would be kept under surveillance until they could determine whether it was hostile or friendly. It later turned out that it was friendly in that the occupants were dead, and when we got aboard, there were 5 bodies. The bodies were diminutive in size, in other words, 3.5 feet. The largest one was just under 4 feet. 2 of them were obviously the commanding officers because 2 of them wore epaulets on their shoulders. Later turns out that they were all male. When we flew them back to Wright-Patterson, of course, the examination, physical examination, and the autopsy, of course, revealed that they were indeed all male.
From descriptions given by several witnesses, the aliens have very large eyes, a small nose, and a small mouth. They are usually about 3 feet 6 inches in height and have no body hair.
Now, consider, if you will, the position of the United States government at this time. They proudly thought of themselves as the most powerful nation on Earth, having recently produced the atomic bomb and won World War II with it. They had built a jet aircraft that exceeded the speed of sound in flight, or would, in October of '47. They had built bombers with intercontinental range that carried weapons of mass destruction. Now, imagine what it was like for these same leaders, all of whom had witnessed the panic of the Orson Welles broadcast in the War of the Worlds in 1938. Thousands of Americans panicked at a realistically presented invasion of Earth. But imagine their horror as they actually viewed the dead bodies of the real aliens. Imagine their shock as they tried to determine how these saucers were powered and could discover no part even remotely similar to components they were familiar with. No cylinders, no pistons, no propellers, no vacuum tubes. It's only when you fully understand the overwhelming helplessness the government was faced with in the summer of 1947 can you comprehend their perceived need for a total, thorough, and sweeping cover-up to include the use of deadly force.
Increasing numbers of civilian witnesses reported seeing UFOs between 1945 and 1950. Among these, many reported personal contact with aliens who look exactly like us and had come in our best interest to guide us through our problems and warn us against taking the wrong direction.
Many of our race already exist on your planet, living and working among you for the purpose of giving advice and guidance to a limited number of individuals with whom they make contact. The people contacted know we are among you and have been chosen because of their awareness and understanding of the higher cosmic laws.
Your society is not yet ready to be made aware of our presence, but as your evolution progresses, we will reveal ourselves. Your authorities persist in trying to entrap our kind with the purpose of obtaining knowledge for aggressive means. This cannot be permitted to occur and is the main reason for our secrecy.
President Truman ordered a heightened level of security after the capture of a live alien from a UFO which had crashed. Because of the ever-increasing numbers of UFO sightings at the time, it was decided to create a project called Blue Book, which was designed to suppress public knowledge and create an atmosphere of ridicule around the subject of UFOs. Professor J. Allen Hynek was a professor of astronomy and an astronomical advisor to the United States Air Force on their UFO educational program.
And I know the job they had. They were told not to excite the public. Don't rock the boat. And I saw it in my own eyes happen that whenever a case happened that they could explain, which is quite a few, they made point of that and let that out to the media. Things that the cases that were very difficult to explain, they would jump handsprings to keep the media away from it. For they had a job to do, to, whether rightfully or wrongly, to keep the public from getting excited.
A live alien was captured in 1948 after a UFO crashed in America. He refused to communicate for 1 year and was given the name EBE, or Extraterrestrial Biological Entity. He later began to communicate and gave details of his home planet. EBE had a large crystal which he linked to his mind telepathically and was able to communicate with his own race. He was also able to see into the past and future and perform many other amazing feats. He told of believing in the universe as the supreme being and stated that his race lived in harmony without wars and had nearly eliminated all diseases. He said they lived to approximately 800 years of age and that their technology was far in advance of ours. The authorities were amazed by the things they were shown through the crystal. EBE was able to communicate with huge spaceships which were holding orbital positions thousands of miles from the Earth. He told them that their crafts were capable of reaching areas in the universe beyond our imagination, and that they were operated by thought control coupled to biological computers, and consequently did not have any control systems as we understood them. He talked about his planet and how their technology had created a system where everything was self-functional and did not require a workforce to operate it, and that everything was monitored from a central control system. He said that technicians were present there. He said their power source was eternal energy from the cosmos. He told them that his race didn't have a government like Earth, but a society governed by wise elders who sat in council to make decisions of policy. They did not have a monetary system because the needs of the people were catered for by the Federation, which made them all equal. At the request of the aliens, a meeting was arranged with President Eisenhower in 1954. It took place amid tight security at a secret location. At this meeting, negotiations took place regarding the permitted presence of the aliens on Earth. Eisenhower told the aliens that the world was not yet ready for them.
Eisenhower witnessed an alien demonstration of technology and power at Muroc Dry Lake, which is now called Edwards Air Force Base. I believe we made a deal, and the deal was that in exchange for super technology, super weapons technology, we would agree to ignore the abductions that were going on. He made it more military-oriented than, say, a civilian president would have. And it's this, I think, that has let his actions let the real power of the executive office slip through the hands of the president into MJ-12. The President of the United States does not have a high enough clearance to know the whole thing. And it's interesting to note that above top secret, there's 38 levels of clearances. Eisenhower is the last president to have a full briefing on the alien problem. There was a disdain of elected officials throughout the intelligence and military communities, and they just didn't like the elected officials. So every president since then has not had high enough clearance to know the whole problem. Now they know there's aliens, they know we've recovered saucers, and they know that we're trying to get technology. But there are certain other things which probably only about 25 people on the face of this earth know.
When members of our race visited the Earth, we told you we had a technically and emotionally advanced order who had made the mistake of permitting our technology to stifle our emotional role. Through the course of time, we had become totally devoid of any emotional instinct and were unable to experience love, hope, or joy. The result of this was a race which had become totally mechanical and had lost the reason for existence. We need help, and we looked to the human race for help, because we realized that all the higher emotions were still alive on Earth. We requested the facilities and material biological assistance necessary to transfer the DNA to our race, to assist us in evolving again. The loss of our emotions was a gradual process which came about silently, without us being aware of it, until it was too late. We now realize that emotion is the greatest gift any creature can have, and without it, existence has no meaning. We need to feel the joy of love and beauty, and to be able to be happy or sad, or even cry and show affection to our own kind. To bring back the spirit of friendship and loving harmony to our world.
It is rather problematic about talking or analyzing possible reasons for extraterrestrial visitors. What is the purpose? What are their intentions? If we speculate about the motives of extraterrestrials, we can only do it from a human point of view. However, we must really accept also the possibility that extraterrestrials are, from their mental makeup, from their psychological makeup, so different that motives cannot be compared. They may be completely unemotional in investigating human civilization. They may have no emotions like pity. They may have no emotions like happiness. So the speculation is difficult.
When coming down to Earth, it ceases to be free space, with systems to monitor every move.
I happened to see flying saucer on several occasions on the radar. I even intercepted with 4 jets in '55, and it was clear to me that the saucers we intercepted could hear what I told the pilots, because they reacted on my instructions to the pilots. It was one day when one of my people in the radar called me and said, "Major," I was captain at that, "Captain, we have something on the screen which passes with a speed of 18,000 kilometers per hour." Impossible. Nothing could fly with that speed. I went out there, yes. They were passing with 18,000 kilometers per hour. All of a sudden, after some while, they did not pass anymore. They were stationary around the field. And they came and they left without we could see it. All of a sudden they were there. All of a sudden when the sweep came around, they were gone. I contacted the operations officer and the station commander. They both came out and they wouldn't believe me. I said, give me 4 aircraft and I'll intercept them. Okay. Sometimes there were about 20 objects around the field, and sometimes we were down to a few. It was fog, and therefore a lot of people afterwards said, oh, it was inversion, but it was not. It's proven afterwards it could not be inversion, which is a meteorological phenomenon. So at 11 o'clock, I had 4 jets at the runway, and at 11 o'clock, the fog lifted so we could take off. And I ordered the 4 jets to take off. In that moment, there was 12 objects around the field. And when I said you are cleared for takeoff to intercept unidentified flying objects, 10 of them went away. Right when the sweep came back, there was only 2 left. 1 10 miles north of the field, 1 15 miles south of the field. I sent the 2 aircraft to the north and the 2 aircraft to the south. 2 aircraft to the north came first, and I said, your boogie, which is the object, is 12 o'clock straight ahead. 12 o'clock, distance 5 miles, altitude unknown. Do we have it in sight? Gone. Came the next one. When it came up, I said, your boogie is 12 o'clock, range 5 miles, altitude unknown. Do we have it in sight? Gone. So it was clear they could hear what I said.
But while the visitors monitor our every move with their superior technology, being technically advanced does not always ensure their own safety. This was proved by the UFO crash in the Kalahari Desert in 1989. One of the most documented cases of all time referred to a 60-foot wide spacecraft which was forced down on the border of South Africa. This craft impacted with the desert at high speed, causing a crater 450 feet in diameter and 36 feet deep. Official military documents revealed that the craft entered South African airspace at 1:45 p.m. on the 7th of May 1989 and was intercepted by 2 Mirage jet fighters. Because the craft failed to respond to communication, one of the fighters was ordered to attack the craft with an experimental laser cannon. This caused the craft to lose altitude and crash.
After the craft was retrieved, it was removed to a secret Air Force base. And on arrival at this base, it was found a door had partially opened in the side of the craft. Hydraulic pumping gear was brought to the scene, and the door was forced open. When this was done, 2 aliens staggered out of the craft, and it was found that 1 appeared to be seriously injured. They were immediately arrested and removed to a medical center, where a medical team was sent in to try to assist. The authorities at the scene entered the UFO, and hieroglyphics were found inside the machine, alien hieroglyphics, of course, and various items of electronic equipment were also removed from the craft. The retrieval team from America arrived eventually, and the object plus the aliens were eventually taken by C-5 Galaxy transporters back to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, where further analysis was taken on.
When the military entered the craft, they quickly removed portable equipment and instruments, some of which were considered useful as potential weapons. This was not certain at the time, but was clarified after scientific investigation. Also found aboard the craft were a series of hieroglyphics, which indicated that the aliens had a written form of communication. The writing gave the impression of an alien alphabet, but it is not known if any of the scientists present were able to understand its meaning. Data found on the craft were stored on a system of silicone slides. It was obvious to everybody at the site that they were dealing with a very advanced technology, including the propulsion system. As more and more alien technology comes into the possession of our scientists, more understanding is being gained about the physics involved in producing propulsion systems capable of taking man deep into space.
The American Naval Deep Space Command, who also call themselves the Guardians of the High Frontier, are responsible for the location and identification of all objects in space around Earth. It's their claim that they can track and identify an object as small as a football at a distance of 30,000 miles. They refer to unrecognized tracks as unidentified orbiting objects and have been known to locate up to 6,000 of these in a 3-month period. Their area of responsibility lies outside the Earth's atmosphere. Below this level, the monitoring of the sky is taken over by NORAD, which is the North American Air Defense Network. Larger radio telescopes are on station throughout the world. They can scan the heavens to distances of hundreds of light years. This network of space surveillance ensures that any object heading towards the Earth can be tracked from a vast distance. As an object approaches, it is monitored throughout its journey. If any object should land or crash on Earth, the contact point is known immediately, and quick response teams swiftly arrive on the scene. This network was created after the Roswell incident, and since that time has developed into a sophisticated search and retrieval operation. Quick response teams are located in strategic positions throughout the world. Once there, they isolate the area and ensure that the public is kept unaware of sensitive incidents.
All over in NATO, they are interested. It's generals and colonels. The Americans are interested, the English are interested. Everybody knows about it. I was one in Wiesbaden with one of the squadrons down there, and I worked with a colonel. And one afternoon, I was going to nearby town, I don't remember the name. And I went to the office in civil clothes to pick up something, and he was sitting there. Hey, Major, he said, where are you going? I'm going to city. What is that? He pointed. I had my badge here with a flying saucer on my blue jacket. I said, what? That, damn it, that. He said, nothing. It's a flying saucer. I said, it couldn't be. You Americans have proven they don't exist. Shut up, he said. He took the telephone and rang. Jack, Pete, come on now. And in a sudden, we had 5 officers and himself. And we talked for 3 hours. And they knew exactly as much as I did. So everybody knows about it. And it is not illegal. And you are not disliked. I have talked with generals for hours, not on my purpose. They asked me to talk with them about it. They have received my magazine, UFO Contact, for years. So they are interested, but since the public opinion is secrecy, they can't go any further.
Although many years have passed since the beginning of the UFO era, the veil of secrecy has remained to keep the public uninformed. Despite the suppression of information, millions of people throughout the world are still seeing and reporting the presence of UFOs in our airspace, and many more millions are now firm believers in the presence of extraterrestrial flying machines. They know that UFOs exist.
I think what has happened over the years, the government has lied so much that they have painted themselves into a corner, and it's almost impossible for them to tell the truth today.
The biggest secret in the history of mankind, and the government is not going to let this out. There is no way to get anything out under the Freedom of Information Act.
In Russia, the subject of UFOs is now out in the open. Marina Popovich is a retired Russian cosmonaut and fighter pilot. During her military career, she was twice awarded her country's highest military order, Hero of the Soviet Union. She is now one of Russia's leading UFO researchers.
10 years ago, people only made jokes about this subject. Now the attitude to UFOs is very positive. The majority, 80%, think there is extraterrestrial intelligence and that this intelligence is trying to establish mutual contact with us. Now cosmonauts and pilots are more willing to report their contacts with UFOs when they have taken place.
Unlike the rest of the world, the Soviet Union has an openness about the subject of UFOs. They even have a monthly television program devoted entirely to it. In the near future, university courses will also be available to study the subject. Several Soviet generals have already stated that there is no question as to what UFOs are. We know they are alien spacecraft.
But at the Center for UFO Studies, we have a computerized data bank that now has more than 75,000 UFO reports on it. And what is even more interesting, they come from, by latest count, from 133 countries. When you start reeling off the countries, it sounds like a roll call at the United Nations. And even more interesting, and the just numbers themselves don't mean so much, but the thing that finally convinced me that we were not dealing with nonsense is basically the caliber of the witnesses. Many of the reports are made by highly responsible people, impeccable integrity, people in technical training, air traffic controllers and military and commercial pilots. Finally got to the point, and it took me quite some time. I finally got to the point, however, where I simply said, I can't continue to call these people deluded or nuts. They are seeing something. Something is real.
The late J. Allen Hynek was an astronomer, just like I am. His background and mine are very similar. He was for many years a professor of astronomy, and so was I. And what Hynek said was, UFO research is leading us kicking and screaming into the science of the 21st century. Like Hynek, I sought to debunk the reality of UFO phenomena, and like him, discovered just the opposite.
Technology has advanced rapidly over the past 50 years for all the world to see. But in secret locations, amid tight security, the true advance of technology is hidden from public knowledge. From one such location came the stealth bomber. This futuristic aircraft is the only type known which has the ability to fly into radar-protected areas unobserved, almost without sound, to perform whatever task is necessary. The technology used in the production of the aircraft is a giant leap forward from conventional technology, and the question has to be asked, where did it come from? At one super-secret US government test facility situated in the Nevada desert, strange glowing lights are regularly seen performing aerobatic displays which are far beyond the capability of our known aircraft. They seem to be intelligently controlled. Can this be yet another example of some secret, very advanced technology? Or are the authorities hiding some exotic foreign contrivance? Here at Area 51, also known as Dreamland, is the most highly protected and secret facility in the whole of the United States. Bob Lazar, a physicist, worked on special projects within this complex and felt compelled to reveal what he saw.
They are actively and have in their possession alien spacecraft, and they are actively undergoing analysis and flying them. They set up and produce their own gravitational field. Just as the Earth holds all matter down, they produce that same field, but out of phase, and it repels itself. The effects that can cause, the way in which everything operates is by all intents and purposes, magic. I mean, it is so far beyond our level of technology.
Why is such technology available only to the few and not to the whole of mankind? Have we the right to know? Are we ready for it yet? Or is the race for technological advantage more important?
Why keep a secret about probably one of the most important events in history, that there's been contact from an alien civilization? It's a significant event in history, more significant than anything.
With the tremendous distances involved, travel to the stars would seem impossible. But with man's endeavor and resourcefulness, these problems will be overcome as they always have been in the past. Scientific estimates tell us that there will be a breakthrough in space travel in the near future. When the boundaries of distance break down, the Earth will become our home, the universe our world.
From a point of physics, there are possible models today which may enable shortcuts in the space-time continuum. One of these shortcuts may be black holes. Black holes are the remainder of very large stars, which have collapsed to a so-called singularity. And when stars do collapse to a singularity, they leave a tunnel, a gravitational tunnel behind, a rotating tunnel. And in this tunnel, space and time has a completely different meaning than to the normal usage that we make of space and time. Thus, in a tunnel, the so-called Einstein-Rosen bridge, time runs backwards. So a spacecraft which would dive into such a tunnel would move forwards in space and backwards in time.
When we talk about hyperspaces and opening up the number of dimensions, and if we were to build a vehicle, if our science has progressed to this point, our technology, the applied science, if we develop a vehicle that is capable of doing that, traveling across the universe is not traveling through one space. It's flipping into these other spaces where the other one is only a short space away, a few inches away. And so you're talking about flipping rather than going like an arrow through a space-time or a bullet. You simply flip and flip back, and there you are. And so with the control of flipping, you could flip from here, and then you could flip up into the third or fourth dimension higher than this 3. And you could flip back into this dimension, this space-time, only you could flip several galaxies away. You could jump between galaxies.
The third possibility may be dematerialization. Science fiction authors have always mentioned this possibility, and although this may be utopia to us today, sometime in the future it may be possible to dematerialize a spacecraft into pure energy and then beam the spacecraft the speed of light to another solar system where it would materialize again, reassemble again, thus bridging these vast distances.
If we have a hyperspatial model, then simply by turning in another direction, a right angle, we would lose one dimension. When we turn 3 right angles, we lose all 3 dimensions. And that would be called full dematerialization. As far as we're concerned, when you turn 1 dimension, you would have lost one dimension, your length, and so you would appear to be a flat plane. You would appear to be a light form. By the way, some 83% or so of the UFO phenomena are just lights at night anyway. Most researchers throw those away. Those are the interesting cases. And particularly interesting are the cases where the light forms materialize into material forms and then dematerialize back into light forms and then fade away. And what I maintain is that you're looking at that phenomenon when you're seeing that. Now, that can be described mathematically, but that phenomenon of the hyperspatial aspects of it does exist, and you can show it. And I printed a photograph that showed the stars right through a dematerializing so-called spaceship. And so you do meet that format, and that is part of the phenomenon.
If NASA has its way, many of the next generation will be residents of Mars, and the move towards this has already begun with the development of a space station. This was the essential first step towards making man a citizen of the universe.
What is really the long-range purpose of the space station? And we have worked on that question for a long time in NASA. We have started in the early 60s under the guidance of Dr. Werner von Braun and others to look at long-range goals beyond the moon, beyond Mars even. And only recently, in fact it was July 20th, 1989, the 20th anniversary of the landing of Apollo 11 on the moon, that President George Bush proposed a new program, a long-range program, with a goal to return to the moon and eventually go on to Mars, to the United States, as a long-range commitment. And as we develop the space station itself will be used as a test bed, as a laboratory to test new technologies. And you need space to develop those technologies. As long as we are still on Earth, we can just talk about it. The question of which technology to use for this new, what we call the Space Exploration Initiative, that's the name, SEI, Space Exploration Initiative, what technology to use in the area of propulsion or life support or materials and structures and power and communications is being analyzed and investigated by NASA right now. And we're doing it in a number of categories. We're looking at present-day technologies, tomorrow technologies, and advanced technologies which are day after tomorrow.
What was yesterday's science fiction is today's very palpable truth. Grandfather's spine-chilling fantasies have become an indispensable part of modern life. Jesko von Puttkammer was NASA's advisor to the creator of Star Trek, Gene Roddenberry.
You know, the reason I worked with Gene Roddenberry was because he wanted us to help him portray a future 200 years from now as we would like it to be. Very positive, technology having become our friend instead of our enemy, technology as a partner of humans. And of course the story itself of this machine, Voyager or Ouija, looking for its maker, its creator, which is really a metaphor of humans looking for their God. And it's a God-seeker story. And so he wanted NASA to show that the technology which the movie and his TV series depicts is accurate, that the physics is accurate, that the mathematics is accurate, that the astronomy is accurate. The propulsion system of the Star Trek consists of two major elements. One is the energy source, just to provide energy, which is the antimatter system. That makes sense, that could be done. But the propulsion itself, to push the ship, it's called a warp drive, and that has to do with changing space itself and flying faster than the speed of light. We know what antimatter is, and that when you have antimatter and real matter and it comes together, you get a tremendous explosion, you get tremendous energy, E equal mc square, as Einstein said. And so this is the most powerful reaction you get in the universe, therefore the Starship Enterprise uses it.
So there are a number of models which are feasible for interstellar or even intergalactic travel. Nevertheless, we must be clear about one point. There may be so many possibilities we can't even think of. So at the moment we have theoretical models, but a highly advanced civilization, another solar system, much older than we are, may have discovered fantastic ways of traveling among the stars. And for them it may be like traveling from London to New York, traveling from Epsilon Eridani to the solar system.
The message from the alien visitors is becoming clear. The human race is producing more problems than it is solving. A change of direction is necessary to guarantee a safe transition into the future.
They are here to warn us. They started this program a couple of thousand years ago. They are very highly technical and spiritual advanced. These people have a technique that they can foretell development in cosmos for centuries. And they knew thousands of years ago what were going to happen on Earth. So they prepared for that situation. And we go forward to our time. Now they are here in our atmosphere in large numbers. They have always been here, but now they are here in large numbers to look over what we are doing, simply because they know that we'll kill ourselves in many ways. If we don't push the button, we'll be killed by poison. If we don't kill each other by poison, we'll kill each other by too many people.
Energy is the lifeblood of civilized society, but it's also a tool that has to be controlled.
They are flying on what we call free energy. They take it out of cosmos and fly on it. And you could do the same with your boat, your car, your machinery. Everything on Earth could be completely free. Do you think that the oil companies and the coal companies and the atomic and so on and so forth would accept it? Never.
Despite our problems, we have gained a new conception of cosmic energy.
It turns out the universe is filled with energy, mind-boggling amounts of energy. As we like to point out, 1 cubic centimeter of vacuum, according to modern physics, can be calculated to have energy that can produce more mass than is in the observable universe. There's plenty of energy in the pure raw vacuum. We need to find a little process to get just a little bit of that. Even the most inefficient process imaginable, 10 to the minus 80th, for example, is a great efficiency for this, and we can do that. The point is, we do not live in a closed system. That's the old physics. The new physics, since quantum mechanics, the vacuum is a source of energy, but it's a peculiar kind of energy. Let me explain the peculiar kind. When a bird flies in and sits on a power line, he sits on a very high potential, but between his 2 feet, he has no potential difference, no voltage. And so even though from the line to the ground, it may be 100 million volts, to use a theoretical figure or a hypothetical figure, the little bird can sit very happily with his feet on this supposed 100 million volt line, and he has no volts across his body. He's very happy and doesn't even know it. Let him touch one of his feet to the slightest thing that has the slightest difference there, and he'll fry to a greasy spot. Now, in the vacuum, we have the same thing. We have an extremely high potential or charge of the vacuum, but we're immersed in the vacuum. And so the question is, we are like the little bird. Normally, what we put in the vacuum, we don't have any difference between 2 pieces of our machine, so we can't get a current. An analogy I use of tapping a paddle wheel in the river, what we tap the energy from is the current of the river, not the pressure in the water. And so our problem is to find a way to tap the pressure, so to speak, rather than the flow, or to convert the pressure into a flow. That can be done, and we can tap the inexhaustible energy that's in the vacuum, and it has been done. And when we do that, we can get plenty of clean, free electric power, right, straight from the vacuum itself. So, do I believe in free energy? I can prove conclusively that the energy is there. Nature has been very kind. We are free to do anything that we are smart enough to discover how, but we've got to use our brain and our mind to discover how. But the mechanism is there for us to do it. I fully believe that. And inventors I work with, I will state point blank, at least 2 of the very brilliant inventors I work with have produced free energy devices that are real and do work, and I personally have measured and dealt with the devices. They're real, they work, it can be done. And so it's an energy which has the aspect of restoring the biosphere and restoring life. For example, it's clean, so you wouldn't have all the pollutants from burning fuels and so forth, and for the nuclear byproducts and so forth. It's very clean fuel. You have absolutely nothing left but just energy. And you can transform it from either negative to positive. If you need the form of positive energy, you can do that. You can transform it back to negative, and you can reach a very nice energy balance in nature. It has some other very positive benefits that don't show at first glance. The Earth, Sun, and Moon are connected not only by radiation of the normal electromagnetic energy, the external scattering stuff, but the half that's left out, the internal hidden energy. If you pollute one part of this system, the pollution feeds and spreads to the whole tri-system. Literally, we are polluting not only the Earth presently, but we are also polluting the Moon and the Sun in the scalar components. And that's what is gradually being radiated back to us. And so the very vital part of the energy that living systems have to have continually to be living systems and maintain their life is slowly being affected. And of course we need to clean that act up right away, because that's the worst kind of pollution we can possibly have.
Earth, the gem of the cosmos, a living, breathing miracle of creation, the home of mankind, a partnership of dependency and loyalty to each other. The passing of time saw man forget his loyalty. He began to poison and suffocate his planet because of his growing need for power to fuel his technology. A scientist of great wisdom and vision, Nikola Tesla, foresaw this danger and offered the world his discovery of the magic wave as pollution-free energy. His offer was rejected.
Tesla gave you multi-phase power, he gave you AC power, the practical transmission of electrical power, the rotating electromagnetic field that made motors and generators possible. And so he literally helped you bring in the electrical 20th century. Had it not been for Nikola Tesla, your cities would still be dark, you still would not have electric power, and you'd still be struggling around in the dark. So yes, Nikola Tesla was important to us. Had we listened to Tesla about the other parts of the magic wave he had discovered, he would have given us cheap energy. I delivered a paper in Ottawa, Canada, where I gave the actual mechanism by which his amplified transmitter, his magnifying transmitter, actually worked. There are over 1,000 papers in the scientific literature that show that mechanism is real. It would have worked, and he could have given the world cheap energy. You could not, however, have had a power meter on that you sell it to folks. They could have tapped it cheaply and freely just for building the antennas and putting in the taps. And so the powers that be suppressed Tesla and Tesla's work because of the fact that he was going to get the power meter off of your power. He would have given you cheap energy, cheap power, and clean power. He did give you radio, he gave you fluorescent lights, he gave you the things that made motors and generators, and he gave you the electrical 20th century. He would have given you a lot more had we listened to Tesla and funded him.
Tesla's advanced knowledge of the laws of electricity and magnetism, combined with his ability to put them into practice, gave him foresight into the next generation of electronics with regard to light and its structure. He was an ambitious man who was a great favorite in society, where he would show a light bulb in his hand burning without any electrical connection. Tesla said, "I could only achieve success in my life through self-discipline, and I applied it until my wish and my will became one."
He was a magnificent genius, and had he been funded to continue his work, the world would have been 100 years further in science than it is today. Here some 80 years later, so to speak, after the collapse of his magnifying transmitter. And here we are trying to rediscover what Nikola Tesla was doing right at the turn of the century. And so we're almost a century behind where we should be. That's the importance of Nikola Tesla.
Progress is the process of moving forwards and not backwards. It is a combination of achievement and forward vision which serves its creator without fear of unforeseen consequences. There can be no progress if these rules are not observed.
People always back something they call progress without giving it a proper definition. I think technical innovation is not progress by a long way. Technical innovation can only be progressive when it is combined with a step in the direction of humanity. And it's just that I miss. Nuclear power stations are not progress. Because of this monstrous gigantomania in the buildings and the walled-up concrete areas and the risks, you are here playing with a fire that can't be put out. And the risks are extremely inhuman. And so these gigantic buildings are put up, and especially the military-industrial building complexes, which in the end all lead to the scars of this pseudo-progress, practically destroying the natural foundations of human life. And so that the whole of society becomes, in effect, a society of chaotic beings that will lead to global suicide.
Real progress is being made in a laboratory in Canada. Here, the full significance of the physical laws of light and space have become clear to John Hutchison, and he is utilizing this knowledge to produce cause and effect experiments which lead to an understanding of the harmony of nature. Science, in harmony with the laws of nature for the good of mankind, will hold great values in many fields and would advance its course beyond our present comprehension. John Hutchison has been working in the areas of electromagnetic forces and the changes in the molecular structure of materials for many years. He has in this time achieved a breakthrough in anti-gravity knowledge, providing spectacular examples of heavy objects flying through the air without any visible signs of propulsion. He has also made amazing discoveries concerning the alteration of compositions of materials by subjecting them to a form of electromagnetic bombardment.
We're looking at something which you know shouldn't be happening.
The result of these experiments showed in graphic detail metal heating to a near liquid state without heat. Hard metals would turn into soft rubbery objects, proving that any substance could change its form if the science involved was understood.
I immediately realized that this had tremendous significance. It had significance in space, it had military implications, and its understanding could possibly open up a whole new energy source.
Hutchison is one of the growing number of scientists who realize that by applying physics to the natural laws of the universe, science will be taken into areas previously unrecognized. John Hutchison's achievement will give science a new momentum as it moves into the next century.
Some of the work of the lone inventor, John Hutchison in Canada, Vancouver, Canada. Hutchison takes two Tesla coils and essentially puts in the center of them a target, which in every target has certain nonlinearities, and then blasts away with these two coils at them. Basically what he establishes is an electromagnetic fighting itself, electromagnetic forces fighting themselves. And gravitational force is made when, a gravitational potential is made when electromagnetic forces fight themselves to a draw, when, in other words, the gradients become zero. The gradient vectors, or the resultants, become zero, but the two forces are still in there slugging it out. All the energy is still going, the work is still going, but it's trapped locally. That's internal energy. That's what gravity is. And the Whittaker paper tells very well how to do that. So when John got things just right, he didn't have control of it, absolute control, but he bored in there with persistence, and when he got things just right to get the forces to fight to a draw, and there was the right nonlinearity in the target, he would have levitation of things even 64 pounds. He would also, another thing you do with such a thing is you cause the magnetostatic potential to change a vacuum. In other words, that's pole, an unfortunate name in magnetism. But in other words, it causes deposits of monopoles inside materials such as metals. And you'll literally have the monopoles repel each other, and you'll have the explosive separation of metals into all kind of grains and structures according to the waves in the Tesla coils that you're bombarding it with. And so he produced magnificent breaks, Hutchison did, in metals and splits as if it were Venetian blinds. And another thing it does, since this stuff comes from the nucleus out, it doesn't go through the electron shells. Its medium is the nuclei. What you have then is you have changes in the atomic nuclei, which result in lattice changes. You have the production of alloys, which cannot be made in this world with normal processes. And some of those alloys appeared in John Hutchison's work as a result of that kind of bombardment. Another thing you have is once charged with scalar radiation, the nuclei then continue to discharge over a long period of time. And so the material continues to change alloy form and so forth over a period of even a year. And you had those changes occur in his work also. He was reproducing and has been reproducing some of the work of Nikola Tesla, and even some of it going further. But that's what he's doing. What he's doing is real. And unfortunately, most people regard John Hutchison as being a little bit off and not really understanding electromagnetics and not really understanding a Tesla coil, nothing to be further than the truth. He's doing the real electromagnetics. He's doing kind of electromagnetics they don't know anything about. He's doing electrogravitation and real.
The truth about UFOs may be painful for us to face, and this might provide a continuing rationale for the government to maintain secrecy. But the truth will and must be known eventually. Continuing our denials and fears, in my opinion, are only adding to the problem. We are all in this together. In a time of opening relationships with the Soviet Union, we have the potential for radically demilitarizing our foreign policy reallocating those resources toward preserving our planet and opening ourselves to the global village. Part of that new reality is embracing the unknown and the possibility that we have visitors beyond the Earth or beyond our dimensions of time and space. We must enter our new openness in peace and without recrimination. Our government of the people, by the people, and for the people needs to be involved in the process, not as a hostile, separate, secret unit. I therefore advocate an orderly, non-vindictive congressional investigation of UFOs and a change in government policy on supporting research in these and other phenomena. The late philosopher Joseph Campbell once said that we are living in a time in which our ignorance and our complacency are coming to an end. It's time we let go of our fears and evolve to a higher awareness of ourselves and our place in the universe.
Maybe the cover-up was in our best interest, maybe not. Maybe the government underestimated the intelligence of the American people and decided we just couldn't handle it. But let me tell you this, the truth is still the truth, and nothing can change that. Not the military, not the government, and not me.
However, in the last few years, there is an evolution in the whole extraterrestrial problem. An evolution so far that the sightings and the encounters become more concrete. We accumulate more and more cases where we get more and more information. More information is released by the governments. We know now that there was a cover-up for so many years. We have always speculated about this cover-up. Now we have proofs. We know that the secret services, not only in the United States but in other countries, have really fooled the public. And very likely extraterrestrial visitors know about this plot. And it is not surprising that in the last years more concrete information is released. Probably this may be a preparation for official contact. Perhaps it's in the interest of extraterrestrials to establish contact because humankind is in a very difficult position. This does not imply that we must depend on extraterrestrials to save our planets. We have to do it ourselves. But nevertheless, we are in a phase where we possibly take the next evolutionary step, a step that is so important because it will decide whether we will survive or simply vanish.
The cosmos is the energy and lifeblood of all things. Man is part of this energy and therefore holds the potential to achieve literally anything. Science is in the early stages of attuning to this enormous reservoir of knowledge where anything is possible. Our comprehension of such things is limited only by the painful realization of change. The idea of a living cosmos is such a new concept that we have not accorded it its rightful place.
Contrary to the popular view, it can be shown and conclusively proved that that has an internal structure of incredible order and beautiful order. It's filled with electromagnetic waves going in bidirections. Pick a frequency, there's a wave going in one direction and a wave in the other direction. The wave that's going backwards is an anti-wave. It's a time-reversed wave. And the vacuum is structured, this potential, a vacuum is just potential is all it is. This potential is filled with a harmonic series of these waves. And so it structures spatially by bidirectional wave sets, and it structures vertically in terms of harmonics. Now, if you then invoke this structure, and you do that with a nonlinear material, and you put in one wave in the nonlinear material, that material will take from the vacuum that excess structure because it turns everything into a potential, and it will put out multiple frequencies and harmonics. That's what nonlinear materials do. Interestingly enough, if you take time-reversed waves and put in those harmonics, when they back up through, they will restore one wave. You can gather the energy and collect it and integrate it together and produce a single thing of much greater energy and lower frequency. And so what you have is the vacuum structures in frequency and spatially, and the connection are waves. And by the way, these waves do not have to move at the speed of light. They can have much greater velocity. Now, the importance of Whittaker's work is that he showed that if you were to take sets of waves that you made on the bench, you made a wave and its anti-wave, and you made the harmonic and its anti-harmonic, you'd have to have at least one interval. In music, we would call that an octave, you know, from C to the next C, for example. If you had at least one octave or one harmonic interval, you would then have a structured vacuum. Now, you can build such sets as these any way you wish to, and each one of those sets is a special form that you can build on the laboratory bench. There is a set, for example, that contains the electromagnetic parts that generate typhoid. That's Kazanashev's work, and that's Kazanashev's death photons that have been shown to carry death and disease. That work has been duplicated in West Germany, or Germany now, and also has been duplicated in Australia and here in the U.S. It also explains the work of Antoine Priori, who built a machine under the proper scientific auspices and under rigorous testing on lab animals, which cured cancer and leukemia almost 100%. Some eminent French scientists that worked with him. It's still in the French medical literature. It was real, it existed. It was squelched. But what I'm saying is, if you use the Whittaker approach, you can now, for the first time, understand how Priori's device worked, because that's what it did. And he used a rotating plasma to make his phase conjugates. We didn't even know about the phase conjugate in those days. Today, we know that one of the things plasmas do under the right circumstances is phase conjugate, or time reverse. And he showed that you can cure cancer, leukemia. You could just as easily set a pattern that would cure AIDS. He showed you could clean out clogged arteries. You could change the immune system, increase the immune system, bring it back up, which would be very valuable to AIDS patients, for example. For every disease, there is a pattern which causes the disease in this structure. For the cure to every disease, you simply take its pattern and time reverse it, and you get the precise electromagnetic antidote. You then put that inside a potential, as Whittaker showed how to do, and you treat the body with that, which is like very, you know, like normal electromagnetic radiation. It's not ionizing radiation. It's not nuclear radiation. Expose them to a rippling magnetic field, for example, with these embedded in the field, and you cure the disease. And that's the kind of medical treatment we ought to have, not this cut them and burn them and poison them type thing that we have now, and many of them are still dying with cancer and leukemia and AIDS. It would take about 3 years. It would take a team of about 30-something people, facilities and so forth, about 3 years, about $20 million a year to deliver the ability to do that kind of electromagnetic treatment.
Yes, our knowledge grows rapidly in almost every discipline. Conservative scientists in the past, or if you like, futurologists, have always been too cautious, too conservative in their estimates. We know that there's a turnover every 5 years of doubling our knowledge, with the consequence that we have a completely different view on the world. Most people can't even keep up anymore with the advance in science. They have problems understanding modern computer science, cybernetics, biogenetic engineering, or nuclear physics. We talk today about great unified models of the natural forces. The man on the street can't keep up, and he is only superficially informed about new aspects. We don't know what will happen in 20, 50, 100, or 1,000 years. However, there's one thing we do know, that whatever happens in the future, science will have advanced far more than we can possibly think of today. And no imagination, no fantastic model that we may produce today will justifiably come close to the actual advance in 1,000 years.
We really do have, right now, available to be born a completely new and drastically extended and drastically more capable physics, which unfortunately 4 nations of the world have weaponized but kept secret from their citizens and from the rest of the world. And what I am saying is that it's high time that instead of just using this in secret to build more weapons to kill more people and hurt more people or control more people, what we need to do is bring this out in the open and let's use it for the positive benefits, to heal people, to give them cheap energy and clean energy, to clean up the biosphere, to clean up our whole act, to be able to heal all these diseases and this kind of thing. That's what I'm saying we've got to get on.
I think the first point in overcoming any difficulty or any problem or any crisis is to have the faith that something better is possible. Without faith, without trust that it can work out better, without the vision of something greater, it won't happen. So I think we have to have some kind of vision, some kind of faith. In traditional Christian terms, this is the idea of the kingdom of heaven. And most visionary schemes in the West are under the influence of this Judeo-Christian model, that at the end of history there'll be a new era, a new dawn, a new age, the kingdom of heaven, a utopia. Well, I mean, there are many different ways of formulating this. We have to think this. I think it's built into our whole civilization. It's very difficult for us not to think this, or at least if we don't think it, we despair.
You're out walking one day. You glance up at the sky. You see silver wings on the horizon, reminders of a long-forgotten past. But we still remember our heritage, and the time is ripe to acknowledge our roots. Our brothers from the other worlds are ready to embrace us. Oh, that would be a joyous re-entry into entirety. Would be a great chance for us. It's our own decision. It's up to us. A circular, shiny object passes in flight. You think to yourself, so the stories are true. What should we do?
I'm absolutely convinced that there is a mutual origin of humankind, of human beings, and some of the extraterrestrials which come and visit Earth. I have various reasons to maintain this point of view. There is a group of extraterrestrials which are really identical with human beings in their size, in their physical look, in their physical makeup. If we take the reports of witnesses seriously, and I do. There are quite a number of cases where these extraterrestrial visitors have made remarks confirming this point of view. They do not officially land in Washington or in Moscow or in London, but they're simply seen rather unobtrusively in such a way that the media is arguing constantly whether UFOs exist or do not exist. We know that they do exist, at least a small nucleus. And whatever their intentions are, I'm sure there's a development in the last few years that it will not be long until we find out.
Encounter. I was determined, if it took me the rest of my life, I was going to find out that day what I had seen that day. And I have never let up from that moment in time. And it has been worth every minute and all the money I've spent on it, because now I'm a far wiser person than I was when I started. I know things now which I would have never known had I not got involved in this thing. That there is a far higher force out there operating than we could ever conceive. And that they're here amongst us. They come and go as they wish.
sense of the mathematical rationality of the universe. He wrote, "The individual feels the futility of human desires and aims, and the sublimity and marvelous order which reveal themselves in both nature and in the world of thought. Individual existence impresses him as a kind of prison, and he wants to experience the universe as a single magnificent whole." What a deep conviction of the rationality of the universe, and what a yearning to understand Kepler and Newton must have had to enable them to spend years of solitary labor in disentangling the principles of celestial mechanics. Only one who has devoted his life to similar ends can have a vivid realization of what has inspired these men and given them the strength to remain true to their purpose in spite of countless failures. For 10,000 years, man has tried to equate with the enormity of the cosmos. The concept of an evolutionary universe which started with gods from the stars, spaceships and telescopes will carry us into a totally changed life. So we turned our faces towards the heavens in the hope of finding a deeper understanding of ourselves, to participate in the quest for universal knowledge, and to hold out our hands in the search for possible cosmic neighbors.
If we consider that most of the stars in the Milky Way are twice as old than our sun, 10,000 million years old, then obviously there may be highly advanced old civilizations which have developed interstellar travel. So my answer would be it is more than likely, not only possibly, but more than likely, that extraterrestrial visitors are traveling to other solar systems, other planetary systems. Thus, we really should expect extraterrestrial visitors in our solar system observing human civilization.
As fantastic as this may seem, photographs of unknown flying craft, known as UFOs, have been taken around the world, captivating the public's attention for decades. This photograph was taken in 1978 in Brazil. This was photographed in Switzerland in 1975. These two UFOs were also photographed in Switzerland in 1975. This was taken in 1971 in Austria. This one was seen in 1987 in Canada. This UFO was photographed in Germany in 1977. This was taken in Colombia in 1971. This photograph of a shiny silver object was taken in North Charleston, South Carolina in 1980. Yet another photograph from Switzerland taken in 1975. This UFO with a cloud-like vapor was taken in 1974 in Denmark. This UFO was sighted in 1977 in Uruguay.
Sky and would return one day. This is one of the prophecies of the Bible which was taken from the word of the visitors. How did modern man go about interpreting these holy clues? The visionaries of the past perceive the structure of the cosmos and its purpose. The life spirit of the elements is a constantly changing mirror of charged perception and energy. The spiral of conscious awareness is the consequence of harmonizing with this harmonic vibration. Within the evolutionary circle of cosmic regeneration is the life force of progression, through which the universal memory of intuition is formed. Leonardo da Vinci was a man of great vision. He realized the significance of the hologram of man in relation to his place in the order of the universe. Many of the first astronomers studied the sky principally from an ideological standpoint. Galileo Galilei, a applied himself to analyzing the cosmos with a view to finding out just how it worked. Kepler believed in the law of equal equation, whereby all scientific experience could be solved by the use of mathematics. The real world is the mathematical harmony discoverable in all things. He also had visions involving space travel, and this already at the beginning of the 17th century. In a letter to Galilei, he wrote, "Let us create vessels and sails adjusted to the heavenly ether, and there will be plenty of people unafraid of the empty wastes. In the meantime, we shall prepare for the brave sky travelers maps of the celestial bodies. I shall do it for the moon, you, Galilei, for Jupiter." Isaac Newton spent many years studying alchemical research, cosmic intelligences, and the soul of the world. His law of universal gravitation involves a holistic vision. Every particle of matter attracts every other particle. Everything is interconnected, but in Newton's opinion, such a force could not arise from the particles themselves. They had no such attractive power. Rather, said Newton, gravitational force depends on the being of God. It is an expression of his will. This aspect of Newton's thought was soon forgotten, however. The hidden forces permeating the space of the universe were soon attributed to matter itself. They arose from material reality rather than from God. And when God was finally dissolved completely away from Newton's vision, what was left was a world machine in absolute mathematical space and time, containing inanimate forces and matter, and entirely governed by eternal mathematical laws. Like Kepler, Albert Einstein was strongly imbued.
Assista agora a mais lançamento com a qualidade Vídeo 3.
The universe, the lifeblood of all things, the home of a billion stars, each with its place in the order of the heavens, and each governed by the infinite law of the cosmos. As the ever-expanding energy of the universe continues to grow in a sea of fusion and creation, the infinite depth of the cosmic reality embraces itself in the fabric of destiny, and the awareness of mankind grows in accordance with the rule of cosmic law. Since the dawn of humanity, we have looked out towards the stars as if compelled by an unknown force, telling us, you are not alone. You are all part of the evolution of the universe, on your way to higher realms of enlightenment. The expanding universe, with its infinite complexities and compelling influences, is the kaleidoscope of man's dreams. With new attitudes and new points of view, our understanding is growing, bringing scientific influence towards new horizons. At last we are beginning to grasp the meaning of the primeval commandment, know thyself, which is inscribed over the portal of Delphi. Today we have a new model concept of science which proves that all natural systems, from minerals to man, inherit a collective memory of their kind. One of the great pioneers who achieved a breakthrough in this area is Dr. Rupert Sheldrake, a biologist whose remarkable discoveries shook the fundamentals of established science.
The entire basis for my work is the idea of the evolutionary universe. See, until 1966, most people thought of the universe as essentially static, most physicists. And the idea was that evolution occurs on Earth, in the biological and human realm, in a universe which is at best static, at worst actually running down, devolving rather than evolving. Since 1966, we've had the idea of an evolutionary cosmos, an evolutionary cosmology. And this changes everything, because now we see biological evolution in the context of cosmic evolution. And the idea of cosmic evolution gives us the idea that all of physics and chemistry, everything, is evolving. And this is what leads me to my main point, that if everything's evolving, then why shouldn't the laws of nature evolve too? Indeed, why shouldn't they be more like habits? This is the essential insight of my work on morphic resonance. And it depends entirely on this evolutionary insight into the whole of nature.
The awareness of our fundamental heritage is inherent in our being. The awakening of the wisdom of the whole is inexorably endorsed within the essence of our spirit. The influence from motivation to germination is the basis of our existence and is predictable in the course of our evolution. The pyramids reveal the wonders of our ancient past. They harness their proliferating energy from the cosmos that it may be utilized by another civilization in its many fields of endeavor. Our awareness of the origin of these citadels derives from past generations. It is inherent in the soul of civilized man to build such structures, reaching towards the source of unseen powers. The challenge of future accomplishment is the driving force behind human progress. From the horizon of the past, the traditions and memories of visiting cosmic teachers has remained engraved in cultural art. This tradition dates from the era when spacecraft visited Earth from distant worlds. Proof of the historical facts of continuing extraterrestrial visitations has been revealed by Eric van Däniken, a best-selling author who investigates the archaeological and ancient artifact connection.
We have been influenced by extraterrestrial beings for thousands of years and will continue to be so in the future. And everything in its own time, the time of the possible. You could say that when an apple is ripe, it falls from the tree a couple of days later. The same is true in global thinking. The extraterrestrials influence us today. They influence prominent people, who then think positively and in turn influence others. There is a constant flow of energy, of thoughts, of new ideas, from the outside to the inside, and from inside to outside.
The ancient Indians of Peru were a highly advanced civilization who lived thousands of years ago in the jungle of South America. Their traditions speak of visiting spaceman. At their reservations are the amazing Nazca lines, which are etched into the earth and which are acknowledged as being aircraft runways and landing sites. Artifacts of great age have been found which closely resemble aircraft of today. The sensational crop formations of England have generated great interest, and the question has to be asked if there is any connection with the etching in Peru.
Ich kenne die Hopi-Indianer sehr gut. Sie leben heute in Arizona. Aber ihre alte Geschichte.
I know the Hopi Indians very well. Today they live in Arizona. But their old traditions say that many, many thousands of years ago their home was in South America, and that at that time they were descended upon by extraterrestrial visitors called Kachinas. These Kachinas also saved the Hopi Indians when their continent threatened to sink. These heavenly beings, the Kachinas, were the teachers of the Hopi, and even today the Hopi Indians make figures of the Kachinas for the younger generations, so that no one should forget the visit of their original teachers from outer space. And even today the Hopi are convinced that one day the Kachinas will come again. In this connection, it's interesting that a short time ago I showed White Bear, one of the oldest members of the Hopi, pictures of the Maya cities Tikal and Palenque. He was beside himself with excitement and said, "We understand that. Our ancestors built that under the guidance of the Kachinas."
The great energy source of the cosmos can be extracted and focused to form a very potent electrical and magnetic power form. It is a power of great destructive potential, and the ability to control it can only be given to those of higher understanding and achievement. Such power sources were built into the Great Pyramids by another race thousands of years ago, when they needed recharging facilities for their spacecraft while on reconnaissance flights around the universe. The units were built within the protective framework of the pyramids to protect them from discovery. As the world focuses on the mystery of the Egyptian temples, our space probes have located similar strange pyramids on Mars.
We have the very mysterious structures on Mars, pyramids, and particularly the large humanoid face looking into the Martian sky. All the investigations on Mars with the Viking probes show quite clearly that Mars has been in the past different. The physical makeup points to an ecological system. And the pyramids, again, really make quite clear that they cannot be possibly natural structures. I really believe that they are artificial structures. The human or humanoid face on Mars shows that if there have been visitors in the past, a long time ago, then they were humanoid.
The readings of the early Bible told many stories of Earth being visited by heavenly teachers on blazing chariots who gave information of great wisdom. They told of how they had always been in the